Well, Florida voters will have a lot to decide this November when it comes to the 6 state constitutional amendments on the ballot. One of those, Amendment 3, could forever change what the state's primary elections look like. Our Alex Osiris is on your side tonight, hearing from Amendment 3 supporters as well as those fighting against it.
If you voted in a Florida primary, you know it's based on your party's affiliation. But for about a quarter of all Florida registered voters, they don't get that chance because they're not party affiliated.
If Amendment 3 passed, all registered Florida voters could cast a ballot in a primary. It would also send the top 2 finishers for state seats to the general election, regardless of their party affiliation. Glenn Burhans is with All Voters Vote, the group backing Amendment 3.
We're talking about Floridians who pay taxes, whose tax dollars fund primary elections, that they're blocked from participating.
Opponents to the amendment, including the Florida Democratic Party and the Florida GOP, say that the change that the amendment could bring could shut out a political party entirely.
Sean Shaw, chairman of People Over Profits, believes the amendment would lead to loss in minority representation in state offices. He said, quote, "We all stand united in ensuring that minority representation in Florida does not get diluted." A People Over Profits study of the 2018 gubernatorial race shows if the primary rules were changed, Democratic nominee Andrew Gillum would not have made it to the general election.
Burhan says if that's the will of the people, so be it.
Voters select those 2 people, and they might be from the same party. Well, that's the will of the voters. That's democracy in action.
The amendment must be approved by 60% of voters for it to take effect. You can see more of our political coverage on firstcoastnews.com/politics, including our election guide. Reporting, Alex Osiris, First Coast News, on your side.